Welcome to Bitter Reality Brewing. Today we're brewing an Altbier. An Altbier is out of Dusseldorf, Germany. Very commonly used with a yeast or fermented with the yeast from White Labs or other companies from Dusseldorf, Germany. Altbier accounts for about 6% of the beers currently sold in Germany as of last year's statistics. I don't know how they track that, but 6%, that's pretty good as far as I'm concerned. We have our malts here. 100% all grain. We're going to take those grains, we're going to basically smash them, break them, running them through a mill. It's going to buckle them and they'll break, allowing to expose the insides of the actual malt. And basically that malt is partially sugar, but primarily starches. And when we'll boil them and convert those starches into sugars. I'll make sure to put this so that everybody can see it as far as down below or on the other side. If you find this video entertaining, enjoyable, funny, whatever, or you're just a fellow brewer and want to show some appreciation, feel free to hit the like button. If you don't know where to find the bell, because people talk about the bell, and I'm like, where's the bell? You have to hit subscribe before you can find the bell. And definitely leave a comment if you got questions, concerns, good, bad, indifferent, I don't care. Always good to hear from people watching the video. Suggestive comments or just positive information, negative information, whatever you want to put. Currently, what we have here, I have all the grains pre-weighed. We have 5 pounds of Pilsner, 2.5 pounds of Munich. We have 8 ounces of Cara-Pils. Cara-Pils is going to help give it a little more body, head retention, allow for the foam to kind of settle across the top. 8 ounces of Victory Malt. Victory Malt necessarily isn't a required malt for that of a Altbier. I like to use it because I like to make everything mine. As far as if I'm going to brew it, I'm going to drink it, it's got to be mine. Victory Malt is going to give it a little hint of nuttiness, a little hint of biscuit. We also added a Carawheat, kind of bring up the color a bit. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you probably understand I love rye. I like chocolate. So of course, I put about 6 ounces of chocolate rye in here. Just enough to add a little bit more darkness to the color and a hint of rye and a very hint of chocolate. It'll be extremely subtle because it's a very small amount compared to the total grain bill. We're also adding 4 ounces of flaked wheat. It's not very much. It's going to help a little bit more with the body and also a little bit more with the head retention. For the hops, we're going to be adding Nugget, which is more of a British style hop. But we're just going for the bittering. The bittering is at 16.8 alpha acid for the current Nugget that we have available. We're going to be adding 3/4 of an ounce, and we'll be adding that at the 60-minute point of the boil on the countdown. And then we'll be adding, as English is my second language and sadly my only language, we're going to be adding a German hop called Spot. Hopefully I'm correctly pronouncing that or getting it pretty dang close. It's a very low alpha acid, but it'll add a little bit more spiciness, a little bit more aroma to the actual hops, because we want a little bit of aroma in here. This is not a typical German beer where it's all about the malts or it's a very light malty beer. This is about the malts and having some hop aroma. They're not looking for the hop to stand out, but we want to add to the overall experience of the actual beer. The yeast, of course, is White Labs Dusseldorf yeast. Used this before, made this recipe or very similar to this recipe per se once before. Ought to be fun, definitely going to be enjoyable when we finally get it finished product and get to enjoy it. As you can see, we have most of our lighter malts here. This is our Munich and our Pilsner, and then over here we have our chocolate rye, and we also have all the other grains such as the Victory, the Carawheat, and a little bit of the actual wheat. Now the wheat, we have flaked wheat. Looks like oatmeal. It's just that. It's smashed flaked wheat. Okay, today we're brewing our Altbier. Altbier is a German balanced beer, slightly on the darker side. Definitely got the caramely malts, but it also has a higher IBU than a lot of the German beers. It's sitting at about 40 IBUs plus or minus. So it's a very balanced beer. Definitely one of my favorite beers and one of the beers that most people don't seem to know anything about, even though according to last year, Germany sold 6% of their beer was Altbier within Germany. Not so much outside of Germany, as I went to a recent beer store, one of those superstores, and they do carry one, but currently they're out of it, and that's all they carry is one. down in St. Augustine, one of our local breweries was brewing an alt beer. I went into a restaurant, heard the word alt beer, and I'm like, enough said, bring it on. Just a great balanced beer. Does have a hint of sweetness to it. Pilsner base, Munich, and you can sub it out for 2-row, but Pilsner, Munich, Cara-Pils to help give a little head to it. Victory Malt, just a great malt to add to it. The only thing I do a little different, but there are always variations to alt beers, is I like to put a little bit of chocolate and rye in there, as most of the carameling is coming from the Munich. Just love rye, so I put a little bit of it in everything, and a little chocolate never hurts. Using Nugget as a bittering hop, Strisselsplat, if I can say it, German of course, as our aroma hop. In the last 10 minutes, we're going to do a Whirlpool at about 150 just to get a nice aroma out of that. And of course, Dusseldorf alt yeast, as Altbier originated in Dusseldorf, Germany, just like Kolsch originated in Cologne. Some people don't realize that, and then there are variations of alt beer throughout Germany, of course. We're going to go ahead. We got approximately 7 gallons of distilled water, because I don't use city water. Don't like Jacksonville's water. Like Jacksonville, just not the water. Going to split that in about half. I'm going to put all of it in here initially, and as we do, we have our brewing salts. Done. I don't have to play mix, mix, mix. I'll put it in there, let it heat up a little, mix it up, move half of it over to our sparge water, or hot liquor tank as they call it. And then once we get the temp up to temperature, we will mash in, which I want to double check, but I believe our mash starts at 122, and then we'll finish, of course, at 168 with a second step mash at 152. The 122 Fahrenheit is considered a protein rest. Kind of recommend it for some of the beers with wheat, even though we only have 4 ounces of flaked wheat in here. I want to get a little bit more of the enzymes out of the grain, so we can get a slightly drier finish to an alt beer. Alt beers are great. Like I said, slightly sweet, but I like them a little drier so the sweetness isn't as pronounced. Go ahead and get this going. If you've seen one of our other videos, I believe it was on the citrus rye IPA. We're having some problems with the Grainfather cutting out at higher temperatures. I have to keep hitting the reset 6, 7, 8 times. It's quite annoying. I have not had a chance to work on that yet, so what we're going to be doing is once we finish mashing, we sparge, we will then move the beer over to the Anvil brewing equipment, go ahead and do our boil. Once the boil is completed, then we will move it back over to the Grainfather for cooling and doing our Whirlpool. So I do have a older Grainfather that was the replacement when they replaced this and just sent me the whole kit and caboodle because it broke several times. And I will try to bypass the safety switches, which seem to be the problem. Do not recommend that because they're there for a reason. But okay, we're at the point where it's saying add grain. We're sitting right at about 122 for our initial protein rest, or initial mash-in, should we say. This off. Got that in there just to keep the grains from going down the tube, per se. If you've seen any of my other videos, even though this doesn't have very much as far as wheat, I'm all about the rice hulls. I put the rice hulls in just about anything. It's super cheap, and it keeps from the mash getting stuck like Play-Doh. So just something I like to put a little bit in. I may not put that much in. Other thing, because it's windy today, we had to use a little saran wrap to cover our grains so we don't end up letting all the nice bits of grain and hulls from the grains fly all over the place. These are our grains. And then I have 4 ounces in here of malted wheat, which just literally looks like oatmeal almost. Good thing to do when you're adding your grains. Sprinkle them in until you get a nice layer. Get yourself a nice spoon. I like this because of the slits to let the water flow through it. And just give it a nice stir. And keep repeating that same process as you're putting your grains in to prevent grain balls or dough balls, which are basically where the grain is put in so thick, it clumps and it doesn't allow the water to flow through it. You want the water to flow through it. You want to capture all that starches and sugars and enzymes. And those starches, when you boil them, the vast majority of those will convert to sugar, which we want because the yeast is going to eat that and convert that into alcohol. If it becomes unfermentable sugars, which is one of the reasons I like to do a protein rest, just to get a little bit more of those enzymes, you're going to end up with a sweeter beer or even a slightly heavier tasting beer as far as on the malt bill. I'm not a big fan of sweet beers. There are certain times it's appropriate, like a Dunkelweizen, or other types of beers, maybe a sweet stout, but I prefer a drier beer, and that's what I'm usually shooting for since I'm going to be drinking some of this. I know a lot of people who prefer the drier side, and I know some more ladies than men probably that prefer it a little sweeter. Okay, we're going to keep mashing in. Once we're done, we're going to go ahead and continue from there. Okay, so we've got all our grains in here. This does not slide in here real easy, so a little trick. Get it wet. It slides right in. It's got silicone around the outer edge, and that helps to put it and hold it in place. The key though is if you're trying to put it in there dry, the silicone is going to keep slipping off, and you're going to fight with it the whole time. If you get it just moist all the way around the outer edge, like I said, it's going to slide right in, no big deal. Pull this back out, drop this back in. I'm going to slide it all the way down. Probably could have gone with the micro tube on here, but it would have been close. So leave that like that. Yeah, the micro would have definitely gone well. We're sitting at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.5, approximately 9.5 pounds of grains. They don't recommend the micro tube for anything over 8 pounds, so larger should have worked, but that's okay. It'll still be fine. Turn this on. We're going to say we've added our grain. It's going to automatically turn the pump on, and the heat will come on and off as needed to maintain the temperature at 122 degrees. Sparge is looking good. Try to level that out a little bit. Another trick is when you first turn on the sparge, water or the recirculation to do the mash, sparging's later. When you go to do that, the water will go to one side or the other if it's not level. So you can tap it and get it level, especially if you had a lower temperature, you're not going to burn yourself. Higher temperatures, yeah, be careful. Not something I suggest. So, okay, we're going to let that run. Okay, so welcome to a bad day brewing. You brew beer, occasionally bad things happen. Today, everything's going south. So, step back and punt. First of all, never got over 116 degrees before this started to burn on the bottom. Not sure, maybe I milled the malt too heavily. I doubt it, because the other 3 batches were milled at the same degree. So I'm not sure what happened there. My old Grainfather, which was broken, I turned around and I actually disabled the reset relay, and it still is not getting up to temperature. So maybe it's this lovely thing doing the click thing again, which been through 3 of those. Not sure what I'm going to do now. So basically what we're looking to do, we're pulling out the sparge water here, which we'll have to continue heating later. We're going to move this water, which is our wort, over here, heat it up to 150 degrees, bring it back over here for the second step, and then we're going to have to repeat the process to 168, pull it up, sparge, which that water will need to be heated at that time, and then once we're done sparging, then we can go to boil, which we know works, and the pump still works over here, thank God. So my thoughts are, either I go back to gas, never had a problem with gas, just it's very hard to maintain temperatures and keep your temperatures at a very set level. You gotta micromanage it. Electric makes it beautiful. Problem with electric is they have a habit of getting very, very hot in one or a very small spot, which causes the burning or scorching. Supposedly the Anvil, they have a new all-electric system. Already looks like it's going in version 1.1 or 1.2 because they've reinvented it, and now there's some major delay until April, and it's just turning March, and the delay was in February. So I may buy one of those. That's where I'm leaning right now. Or I could go to a 3-tier electric or gas system. It's just a matter of figuring out what I'm going to do next. The Grainfathers are obviously not reliable enough for me at this point. Part of this is my fault. There's something going on with the grain causing the scorching, which I don't understand what's going on there at this moment. But the famous click of death is extremely common. I get their safety features and stuff, but when they constantly break, there's a problem. The Grainfather software, I was happy they finally got the new software working properly. I was like, yes, before I give them a 5-star, I want to make sure that it works. And on the 4th brew, it said, hey, you know, you have a brew going, and I couldn't get to it. I don't know why I couldn't get to it. I couldn't change it because it had jumped back to 122, and I was like, okay, we're supposed to be at 150. You were at 150 5 minutes ago. So I rebooted it and said, hey, do you want to reconnect? I said, yes. I couldn't get into it. So then I said, let's start a new brew. And it says, okay, let's stop the old one and start the new one. And it said waiting, and it spun for about 5 minutes. I finally gave up, rebooted, still couldn't get it to do it. It obviously sees it, it's trying, but it's not working. So, like I said, you step back and punt. Things like this happen. Okay, we'll continue here in a moment. Welcome to the bad brew day. It happens. It happens. And I keep telling myself it happens. Back in the time when I did only gas, a bad brew day was because I wasn't paying attention and I had a boil over. Electric, it's so much easier to maintain your temperatures than gas. The problem is there's a lot of electronics. I love the Grainfather's Bluetooth, the wireless, managing it from a device. I'm an IT guy. To me, it makes it easier for me. I love a lot of designs like where I can hook the grain basket up on top. It sits right on there. It's beautiful. It's got a nice handle. The handle does need a little tip in the middle if you have disabilities or if you have to use some sort of a system to pull it up with pulleys. I definitely get that. A lot of people have complained about that for years. But overall, the system is a great system. Sadly, it's the details. The app used to work, then the app got redone, it quit working. 88 1-star reviews, it was pretty bad. Like I said, I was getting ready to go on there and give it a 5-star, 2 brews, no problem, 0 issues that I remember. 3rd brew, click of death. I had to keep hitting the reset, but I got through the brew day. I had to do the boil over here on the actual Anvil 10-gallon pot with my burner. Then put it back, did the chill, no big deal. This time, part of the problem definitely has something to do with the grains because the grains seem to burn or scorch to the bottom at a very low temperature. I don't understand what's going on there. Pilsner, Munich, haven't worked in Munich that much. Didn't mill them any finer than the last 3 batches, so I'm not sure there. But as I used 2 different Grainfathers, one with the safety piece turned off, the one they had replaced the first one because it kept failing to ever hit any temperature over 122. And they replaced 2 controllers. So I basically have 3 controllers, 2 Grainfathers, 2 baskets, 2 pumps, and they're useless. Which kills me because I love Grainfather. I spent $1,200 on my first Grainfather, and actually put a minor dent in the side on the first night because I set a ladder nearby, and the cat knocked it over. Scared the crap out of me and upset me, but hey, it was what it was. One of the pumps started leaking. I don't understand what's going on there. I take the thing down, clean it occasionally, not sure what's going on. Occasionally I flip that off while the pump's still on, never leaks. This time it started leaking. Left a nice little puddle of wort. The sparge definitely got stuck, and there was 4 ounces of wheat, flaked wheat, which definitely has an issue, and that's why I did the protein rest. But there really was nothing else to really gets stuck. I mean, a little chocolate rye, very little, like 6 ounces. Pilsner Munich malt, pretty typical. I am going to be looking for a new brewing system. Sadly, it will not be a Grainfather. It will either be, like I said, all gas, all electric, separate pots, or what I'm leaning towards right now is the Anvil. It is March. The Anvils have been back ordered since late February until April. Supposedly they have a double burner system instead of a single, less likely to scorch. That's huge, since I had 2 scorch, and it's rare I ever have them scorch, and it's usually during the boil, not during the heat up at 112, 122, 116 at the different temperatures it was scorching at. Just kills me. Really like the system, but I can't be wasting $1,000 a pop on something that is going to fail or not work properly. Just can't do it. Most companies, I can get them for about $400 to $500 with a pump. Could buy the pump aftermarket, but the Anvil does come with some additional equipment that with the pump, when you buy it with the pump system. Otherwise, I would buy the pump separate. A good example, Grainfather pump, I can pick up on eBay the exact same pump for about $55, $65 off sale. I can buy it from Grainfather for $185. That's the type of items that just kill me when I'm being kind of taken advantage of on the pricing of certain items. And I understand it's coming from New Zealand, supposedly, although it's probably coming from China. Most of the things are made in China. But still, yeah, I don't want to overpay for something that isn't going to last. They did take care of me quite a few times on the warranty during the first 2 years, but we're going on 2.5, almost 3 years now. I'm well out of warranty, and yeah, just kills. I would expect it to last. If you're dropping $1,000 on something, I would expect it to last at least 5 years. $500, I'm good with 2.5, 3 years. Longer would be better, of course. Don't have money to just burn just for burning purposes. So we're gonna get this boil going. Currently we're sitting at about 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Once we hit up around 212, it should start to boil. We'll pitch our hops and we'll rock on and we'll get through the day. Definitely gonna put some Irish moss in there. Definitely had some grain issues. So, you know, it's not all Grainfather's fault, but at the same time, repeated problems. I'm just to the point of beyond frustration, and I don't need it. No one needs frustration added to their life. I enjoy brewing and I like to enjoy it. I don't like to be frustrated or upset. So here we go. Let's see how it goes. Okay, it looks like we just hit a boil. We're sitting, like I said, just past 212. Got this nice, lovely foam, which is very common with the break. A lot of the proteins. And then see, I can let it actually boil over, which we're not going to do. We've had enough issues today. I'll turn the heat off. We'll turn it back on here shortly. Okay, it's back on. I'm going to crank the heat temp down a little bit, see if we can get it under control. To add insult to injury today, I knew I was running low on propane. Running low on propane gas. Luckily, I always have a second. It was in the grill. Had to grill some food for the wife and kid, but other than that, we're back in business. And the boil has started, and the boil over has been diverted. And we're going to turn it down because it looks like it wants to do it again. As you can see, it starts to foam up. Stirring it, letting some of that heat release, because the problem is the heat gets trapped under all those bubbles with all that foam. And that foam is nice, but it can trap the heat. And the problem with trapping heat is it's going to just expand and expand with anything that gets hot, and it's eventually going to just boil over. I've probably got a good 6 to 7 inches of distance there between the top and where the water is, or the wort. But it doesn't take much to boil right over. So we'll keep stirring that for a little, and we're going to rub the bottom a little bit with the wood just to make sure we're not scorching anything. Very aware of scorching, and sadly with both Grainfathers today at very low temperatures, we had very bad scorches. One was mild, one was major. And it literally happened almost instantly. It's a problem with the density of the burners. The burners really need to be spread out I believe it's called low density instead of high density. That way the whole bottom is heating up evenly versus one small area, which of course just burns. Propane, it spreads it out, but the whole bottom is hot, causing everything to rise. But you could still get scorching. So, okay, I did change the recipe. We were going to do a 60-minute add of Nugget at 12.8 alpha acids. Instead, we're going to do that at 30 minutes, and instead I'm going to drop in a whole ounce. It'll actually cause the IBUs to be a little bit higher, up around the 50s instead of the 45s. Not a major deal. Still within range of the actual specifications for this recipe. Although, in all honesty, a recipe is a guideline. Get creative, do what you want, do what you enjoy. I could have made it extremely bitter. That's not my point. I like Altbiers because they are a little malty and a little hoppy, but they're not over on any one of them. They're right in the middle for me. Okay, we are at a boil, and we're going to maintain that for 90 minutes. We're at just 6 3/4 gallons, and we got to boil it down to about 5 1/4 before we decide to chill it down. Debating on if I'm going to use and which Grainfather I'll use to try to use the cooling system. We shall see. Okay, we're cranking on the boil here. We're down to 6 gallons burned off, literally, or steamed off, boiled off. 3/4 gallon. We're shooting for about 5 1/4. So I'm going to go ahead, set the hot basket in here. Grab our Nugget hops. Sitting at about 16.8 alpha acids. Bought it from local Just Brew It, local beer supply for home brewers. So we're going to go ahead and put that in there. This is our bittering hops. It's going to give us a little bit of flavor too, but primarily bittering. Smells really good, especially if you like beer. Not so much if you don't like beer. Bottom, make sure we don't have anything burning. See, this is popping up, and move it over there. We're sitting right a hair below 6 gallons. Put that back there, and we'll let it boil. As you can see, the boil just finished. Our 1 ounce of Nugget addition hit 30 minutes at the timeout. We're still sitting up close to 200 degrees. I'll scorch there, but I'm blocking the heat from damaging the actual spigot or thermometer. Those temperatures for the external parts are rated much lower than boil. It's about 160, so I want to keep the heat off of that. We're gonna move the wort that's been boiled here, and we'll move it over here to the Grainfather that is sadly just about useless now, and we will use it for the chilling system since I don't have an external high temp pump at this time. I do have a pump that supposedly takes some reasonable temperatures, but I don't want to damage it, so we're just going to go ahead and do it this way. Once we cool it down, then we'll go ahead and move it to our carboy or large 6 gallon container, jug, whatever you want to call it, but carboy is what it's called in brewing. And we'll pitch our Dusseldorf White Labs yeast, and we'll be on to the races. Okay, due to the large particulates I think I got moving the grains around, we're going to use brew in a bag type system, but for a filter to kind of capture any additional stuff that's going to come out of the wort. Try this again. Okay, now use a little wood stand to get it up for the right perfect height. Safety switch up and the wort out. And there it goes. And we'll move it over here shortly. Switch back to the one that appears to have the correct temperature reading. Don't know what's going on, but this one at least I'm getting the correct temperature. It's the same controller shoved into the same spot, but a different unit. And it was very tight on the other one. Maybe it wasn't going all the way in, I don't know, but I pushed it as hard as I could and it wasn't going to go any further. It was a nightmare to get it out even. So okay, here we go. We actually overshot our 140. We're about 135. I'm fine with that. the Stristle splat, or we'll just say additional 1 ounce hops, and drop that in there. Got the chiller going. I turned the pump down. I'll turn it back on once we get the Whirlpool going and get all the hops out of the bag. Always smells good. That one's not quite as citrusy, but that's okay. And as you may have seen in another video when we did the citrus rye IPA, it's, from what I understand, it stirs cement or whatever you use for doing tile. Works great for whirlpooling though, and it's about 15 bucks at Home Depot here in the US. Stick it down right below the hop basket. Making sure we don't hit the hop basket. So let's take this, put it in there. There we go. We're gonna do this for about 10 minutes. Well, wait a minute. Maybe we didn't overshoot the temp. Grainfather's now saying it's 150, 151 and climbing. So 152, and understand the heat's turned off. So but heat does rise, so thermostat down towards the bottom. So all I'm doing is circulating the wort, which is pushing some of that hot water or hot wort down towards the bottom and bringing some of the cooler wort towards the top. So we're now at a peak of 153, technically 3 degrees over where we want it to be, but close enough. We'll do this for 10 minutes, and once it's done, we'll continue to cool. Okay, we're down to 73 Fahrenheit. Had to put my jacket on. I'm a Florida boy, and I think it's about 60, so I'm getting cold. It's gonna be about 30 tonight, which is freezing for Florida. We're gonna go ahead, move the wort over to our carboy slash jug slash container, whatever you want to call it, to make it nice and easy. I'm gonna change this out, put this on. Okay, lots and lots of grain and liquid in there. We'll rinse this out first. Stay tuned. Since we seem to have a little more grain in here than normal, although it's coming out pretty clear now, I put, I call it a hop sock or a hop bag. We normally put hops into a boiling, doing a brew in a bag type system. Put it on here. Oh, there we go. Damn it. Okay, I put a hop sock on there to kind of catch any additional gunk so we don't end up with it in our wort that we're gonna chill and pitch our yeast. Okay, we're sitting at about 51, almost 52. I can't quite look under the frothy line. I'll take that. 52 is what we were shooting for, so it's pretty damn close. We got an older Dusseldorf yeast that I've been keeping for about almost 2 years. I'm gonna pitch half of that with a half of a yeast starter with fresh Dusseldorf yeast, and see how it goes. Sometimes the older ones don't take off as well. That's why I'm also adding some fresh and give it a little help. The wort's all nice and chilled. I just pour it in here, put the cap on, and let it go. Welcome to Bitter Reality Brewing, and we're moving the Altbier in a closed or reduced oxygen way from here to the keg. I've already purged the keg with CO2, as you can hear. Put this in. It's always fun. There we go. And it's going to release the air as the liquid is filling. What I've done here is I've used a pump system to pull water into this keg. We're going to move it over here to the beer. As we see beer move through the pump system, it's going to come over here to the keg, and as soon as it does, we'll stop and move it over there. Our original gravity was 1.052. We expected a final gravity, according to Beersmith, of 1.014, but actually hit 1.008 using Dusseldorf Alt yeast, or Dusseldorf yeast, which is from White Labs. That puts us at approximately a 5.78% ABV. I've already taken a sample, used a refractometer, hydrometer just to verify the numbers, and it's going to be a very good beer. It needs to lager, even though it's an ale, it's going to lager for about 4 to 6 weeks to get a really good flavor. It's just common with the alt beer, although I think it's going to taste great before then. Let's go ahead and get moving. This is just common tap water right here. Put it in here. There goes the Altbier, and boom. Okay. Doesn't feel as smooth as I would like it. Pull it out and put it back on. Oh, let's see why. I put the air on the liquid side and the liquid side on the air side. That'd be why it did not want to fit. And there goes the air. Wasn't paying attention. Okay, here we go. What it's doing, if I can feel it, as it's pushing the beer into the keg, it's pushing the CO2 out. The CO2 is heavier than oxygen, so the oxygen's already been pushed out. Grabbed a little bit of yeast in there and didn't want that getting into the beer because it was extremely clear. And although I did put half a teaspoon of gelatin, which we warmed up and put in there for clarifying, it's only going to make it even look better, even though it looks pretty good to me right now. Okay, we're going to take this, top it up with a little bit more CO2, make sure it's good, put it in the keg, and let it lager, should we say. And thank you for joining us. Today it's time to try the Altbier. One of my, probably, if not my favorite German beer. I cannot think of anything I like better. The Dunkelweizen, well, German sweet dark beer with a hint of rye and chocolate, my own little take on it. Altbier is a balanced beer. If you like a malty beer, you like some hops, but you don't want to go overboard on the hops, and you don't want to go overboard on the malts, but you like a little darker. It doesn't have to be black in any way, but darker. The Altbier might be one of the best beers you've ever tried. I know people who love it, and I know people who just don't even know what the hell it is. According to what I was reading when we first started brewing this batch, was that Altbiers account for 6% of all beer sales in Germany currently as of 2019. The Altbier was started around the same time per se as the Kolsch, which Kolsch was in Cologne, and Alt was in Dusseldorf, Germany. Since the yeast we used was from White Labs, and it was Dusseldorf Alt yeast. I did notice Imperial has an Alt yeast. I'm curious, but I really, really like my Alt beer. So a little risky, but I love to experiment. So eventually I'm probably going to try it anyways. Let's pull the Alt beer, and out of curiosity, yes, we have nice beer taps, but I haven't found the chalk erase tape because this stuff does not erase after a long time. They look very beautiful up here when I do put them up, but when you change kegs out and you have to reach down, any kind of tap that's sticking up more than a few inches is a pain in the neck. I took them off. I used painter's tape, green and blue, write down what the hell's in the tab or in the keg and on the tap. It makes it for convenient. If you're going to have guests, you can put your fancy taps on so it looks real nice. But if you're working and you're constantly changing out your kegs and moving things around, a matter of convenience to get in way outweighs a beautiful tap. Or handle, tap handle. Okay, Altbier. Okay, supposed to have a straight glass, kind of very straight. This is about as straight as I have for an Altbier, and it's got fingerprints for me holding it. So we're going to pull the Altbier. As you will see, the Altbier has a light brown, almost like a Newcastle. Most people are familiar with what Newcastle is. Okay. Had quite a bit of foam initially, but really not too much. It's just got a nice basic head, nothing fancy. This is one that we did 100% all grain. There was no extracts in it. I'm gonna hold it up here, see if you can see, and I'll see if I can get a little light over here. Let's see here. Really should just get a flashlight. You can see kind of through it, and I'll hold it up here. Very, 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 very clear for a darker beer that really hasn't been filtered with the exception of a little gelatin. And I think I used a half a teaspoon in a 5-gallon batch. Some people recommend a full teaspoon. And cold crashing. And that's pretty much it. I smell the malts. I really don't smell much of an aroma. I do know there's a little bit of hops, which I'll list in the recipe so that you see what was the hops that we used. But very, very clean beer. Definitely probably one of my top beers. Yes, I like IPAs. There's quite a few beers I like, but if I walk into a restaurant, or I rarely walk into just a bar, but a bar with a restaurant. Recently was down in St. Augustine a few months back and sat down, asked her what she had that was local. I'm big on drinking local beers. And one of her first things was, oh, we have an alt beer. And then she kind of went over it to skip over it. And I said, stop, I'll take it. Very rare to find that on tap anywhere. Very rare to find a bottle of it in any kind of bottle store or can store, whatever you want to call them nowadays. Great beer. Like I said, if you like a balanced beer, I've used somewhere around the 40 mark. The malt, I can't remember the exact SRM, but like I said, it literally got about the darkness, maybe a little darker than a Newcastle. I know most people know what that is. Definitely darker than an amber Bock by just a little bit, but sitting in around, I believe, 5%. Just very, very drinkable with lots of character, both the malts, the hops. None of them standing out 100%, but none of them subdued. They're all just kind of blending in to give you just a nice craft beer. Thank you again for joining us here on Bitter Reality. Thank you again for joining us on Bitter Reality Brewing. Please hit the like if you enjoyed, found it entertainment, learned something new. Whatever you want to see, hear, or share, please comment below. Definitely appreciate it. Subscribe. You want to see more, know about it. The bell will appear if you subscribe. Otherwise, you'll be like, where's this bell? Don't worry about it. Thank you again.